Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Underground. This is the Intel update for Wednesday the 10th of August 2022, and as usual it is being recorded the day prior on the 9th, so let's get right to it. So for today, this is going to be more of a quick and dirty brief. I didn't really have a whole lot of time for research this week due to working on a lot of other projects. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to skip pretty much all of the infrastructure incidents and concerns. I know that's like the main meat and potatoes of these briefings here, but I haven't really had a whole lot of time to run a lot of these things to ground. So it's not that there hasn't been anything that's happened, it's just that it's getting a lot more difficult to figure out what is a legitimate infrastructure concern and what is an actual attack on infrastructure. This briefing is really right on the cusp of my own personal goal, which is to not put a brief out just for the sake of putting a brief out, but we have just enough stuff to talk about that's occurred in the past few days, really, that's worth putting a brief out. So just wanted to kind of mention that for everyone. And I guess we'll go ahead and quickly move to suspicious fires. So really only one to add this time around, and this is in Birmingham, Alabama. New Mount Moriah Baptist Church was basically burned to the ground actually 2 days ago, so on the 7th into the 8th of August, if I remember correctly. Again, like pretty much all of these other church fires, there's really no indication of whether or not this was arson or not. This one I added to the slide because out of the 5 or 6 church fires that have occurred in the past 48 hours, this is the only one that did not specifically mention a cause. So I wanted to kind of put that out there. Moving on to the Kinetic incident tracker, nothing for the Northeast just yet. There have been a lot of things that have occurred in New York. I still haven't really figured out what my own personal benchmark is for these kinds of events. Because quite literally there is what you might consider a domestic terror attack occurring in pretty much every city in the United States every single day. So I don't know what to include as just general violence now that the bar has shifted so far that generalized street violence is now to the level of what we might have considered a domestic terror attack 10 years ago. I really don't know where we're at with this. So I'm just going to, for the moment, leave high-profile events on this series of slides. So moving down to the southeast region, really there was only one item of note, and I think this is less of a domestic terror thing and more of a personal dispute, and that is in Arkansas. We don't really hear a whole lot coming out of Arkansas with regards to kinetic incidents like this, but this took place in Randolph County, Arkansas, specifically at the home of the Randolph County Sheriff. Someone who apparently had a beef with the sheriff tried to attack his home with an improvised explosive/incendiary device. The device actually set fire to his home while the sheriff and his family were sleeping there in the middle of the night, around 1:30 in the morning or so. The sheriff did get a tip-off before the assailant actually got to his property, because the person who committed the attack is a well-known felon in the area, and he was wearing an ankle monitor. So for those that don't know, in many jurisdictions around the country, these ankle monitoring services, they're not just monitoring someone to make sure they don't leave a certain geographic area. They're also monitoring where a person goes. So in this case, the law enforcement branch there, the county sheriff, either, I don't know if it's internally or some kind of third-party company or whatnot, but anyway, the monitoring service that was monitoring this guy's anklet noticed that he was headed towards the sheriff's home. So the sheriff got a phone call, got an advance warning, things like that. So just so everyone's aware, that's why this is kind of a unique incident, because this guy obviously was caught quite quickly. There's no real motive on this one. Obviously, a firebombing is kind of a high-profile thing, but this looks like this was more of a personal dispute between this guy and the sheriff. So I'm going to leave it on there, obviously, because it's a high-profile event. But we'll move on to the Midwest, specifically the East Central Midwestern region. And really, there were 2 incidents that have occurred. Both of these new incidents are kind of similar, but the first one I wanted to talk about occurred in Chicago, Illinois. Actually, this was a suburb of Chicago. This occurred just a couple of days ago on the 7th of August at the Uprising Bakery. However, this was specifically targeting a drag queen brunch. So this bakery, Uprising Bakery, seems to be, from like the stuff I've seen on social media, an extreme leftist bakery, and it looks like they were hosting an event called Drag Queen Brunch, in which case there were performers that came in and do the stuff that we all kind of know they do now. Well, people showed up and graffitied their bakery up pretty good, calling them groomers and such. So yeah, pretty standard. They actually broke a few windows, front door, things like that. But as far as a motive and like a claimant, it's probably a solid guess that this was done by people that have kind of had enough of this kind of behavior. We don't often see conservatives or traditionalists, I guess you should say, conducting these kinds of operations, but my guess is this kind of thing will probably continue well into the future, such as in the case of number 7. So moving on to number 7 there in Kalamazoo, Michigan, this was a Planned Parenthood that was attacked via arson. So apparently a pro-life individual tried to set fire to a local Planned Parenthood in Kalamazoo, Michigan on the 31st of July. The facility wasn't damaged too much, and this guy left a very long trail of evidence, and so he was arrested pretty quickly. But yeah, I again would expect these kinds of reactionary attacks moving forward into the future. Moving on to the West Central Midwestern region, only 2 items of note in Lawrence, Kansas. Something we don't normally see too often in Kansas. This was, again, vandalism, most likely by Jane's Revenge. The Victory Bible Church and the Calvary Temple Assembly of God, both in Lawrence, Kansas, both located kind of close to each other, I guess. Both were vandalized in the classic Jane's Revenge fashion, so unfortunately, as unfortunate as this event is, it is not uncommon whatsoever at this point, thus even talking about it in the first place, I guess. So I guess we'll move on to the southwestern region. Again, I haven't really found any number of kinetic events that have occurred within the last 90 days with regards to the Southwest. I think it's due to population density and maybe perhaps my own benchmark and search parameters. I'm sure stuff has occurred, I just haven't found it. We'll keep an eye out and I'll make sure to dig a little bit deeper next time. So moving on to the western region, again, only one significant item of note, but just to mention the one item of note that I thought was very interesting, number 7 there in Los Angeles, California, an IED attack occurred at a convenience store by unknown assailants. So this is a very strange one, so that's why I wanted to mention it. So some guy entered a small convenience store with a backpack, set the backpack down on the ground, and ran off. The backpack then ignited / partially exploded. This caused a fire in the store, obviously, but it didn't seem to do much damage otherwise. I didn't see too many windows knocked out or anything like that. Nothing is known about the device itself. As usual, literally all we have to go on are witness accounts and the completely ignorant local news media. So I'm not sure if this counts as a true IED attack, but yeah, I did want to mention it. So just based on how weird it is. You don't normally see this kind of thing, but I guess in Los Angeles anything goes these days. And moving on to the meat of the matter for this time, which is significant governmental actions. First up is the UPS fiasco. So right now I don't really have a lot of new details that I can talk about just yet. Still kind of working through the process to figure out what is actually going down with that, but maybe I'll have some more information next time. Of course, as you might expect, a lot of people are kind of anxious to figure out what's going on with this UPS stuff. Is UPS banning or trying to seize packages? Are they going after individual consumers? The only thing that I can say at the moment right now, just from my basic analysis, is that it's more complicated than you think. But this again does not set a great precedent moving forward with regards to shipping and online firearms dealers or firearms parts dealers, things like that. So when I have some more information, I will bring it. But for right now, I just wanted to remind everyone that this is still going on and do not forget about it. Because as we all know, once something gets out of the 24-hour news cycle, we tend to forget about it. And the UPS potentially cracking down on firearms parts distributors is kind of a big freaking deal. So I don't want to let this one slip into the abyss of, last week, right? So we'll just keep that one on the slide for now. Up next is the FBI document leak, which is interesting. I'm sure everyone on the planet has heard about it by now. To me, I don't want to be condescending, but to me this is not really exciting news because we've already kind of seen this. Much of what was leaked in the FBI's domestic terror brief, right? Much of what was briefed in that document has already been circulating throughout law enforcement communities for, at least over a year now. We remember the DoD's extremism stand down. Most of what was in the FBI paper that was leaked was also in that, saying that anyone who is a fan of American history, anyone who has a Betsy Ross flag is an extremist. None of that's new. So I don't know why the sudden outrage over this, other than, just, I guess, people maybe not keeping up to date with what the federal government has been doing. I don't know. Again, I'm trying not to be super condescending, but when I saw this, it was like, okay, we now have it formalized that the FBI has been doing this. I mean, we formalized this last year, I thought. So anyway, the FBI document leak happened. And all of that being said, the most interesting thing to me, which I've seen a few people online mention as well, is that the groups that were not listed on the FBI's extremism brief, right? So the groups that were not mentioned were any kind of imagery or symbology tied to Antifa or BLM, which again is to be expected because the FBI is, well, they're what they are. We all know what they are now. But what was also interesting to me is that the Patriot Front was not listed. So the Patriot Front is all about symbols. They're all about nice uniforms and interesting little, formations and things like that. But the Patriot Front was not listed. Very interesting. I don't quite know what that means just yet, and I'm not trying to imply that the Patriot Front is entirely the FBI, but I think that there's probably a good portion of the Patriot Front who is either willingly or unwillingly serving the FBI in some capacity, either with informants or just being stupid. Either way, I'm not entirely certain, but all the memes going around about the Patriot Front are at least kind of entertaining, and I just don't have enough information to say what that group is either way. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on that group in the future, but for now, I think that's really all that kind of I have on that. Up next is the IRS. So as many people are finding out now after the fact, Congress just passed a bill to more than double the size of the IRS. This will mean that the IRS, when this becomes law, which it most certainly will, this will mean that the IRS will have more employees than the FBI, the Pentagon, and Customs and Border Protection. So that's very interesting to me, right? The IRS is specifically going to be targeting middle-class taxpayers, which is not just something that conservative pundits have been kind of bringing out, right? This is actually what their history is. Less than 9% of people making over $500,000 are to be audited, right? Because that's what they did last year. So this bill also increases the IRS's budget by over 6 times, at least by my math. From reading the bill, they're going to increase their budget by 600% from just last year, which it was already increased for last year. So yeah, the Democrats and Republicans in Congress who supported this bill claim that the bill will not increase audits on people who earn less than $400,000 a year. And I'm just going to say this is an outright lie. This is the most false thing I have heard today, because last year, 51% of every single human being audited by the IRS made less than $75,000 last year. Over half of who the IRS targets is the middle class. So what's the deal here? 4.8% of all the audits the IRS did were on people making over $10 million. So less than 5% are going to be millionaires, right? And the interesting part is that in this bill, 57% of this new budgetary increase has already directly been allocated to targeting Americans. So the IRS has targeted the middle class, the lower classes, always, which is something that I cannot shout loud enough to anyone who will listen, I guess. But, oh well, I've contained my rage on the IRS for as long as possible, so let's move on to something else before I say something that will get me in trouble. Like talking about the raid that occurred in Florida. So I am sure that by now, everyone has realized what has happened. Last night, as I'm making this brief right now, Donald Trump's compound down at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, was raided by the FBI last night. It is unclear as to what the FBI was doing. However, there have been several rumors that have been floating around. The main rumor that's been floating around is that the FBI has been trying to investigate / seize documents related to Donald Trump's potential or alleged removal of documents from the White House following his tenure in office, right? So they're saying the FBI is trying to say that Donald Trump illegally took documents and is improperly storing classified material. So I don't know if that's going to hold water, because here's the interesting thing that a lot of people might not understand about classified information is that the President of the United States is an original classification authority. This means that the President of the United States has the ability to say, they have the ability to change the classification level of anything. So they can declassify whatever they want. So I'm not entirely sure how the FBI is going to try to justify this. But really, again, this just occurred. This just happened last night. So I haven't really had time to think about it. And as usual, this points to this brief being more haphazard than normal. But I think that one of the things we need to consider is the potential for the FBI to use this as an intelligence collection opportunity. Obviously, people were going to flock to Mar-a-Lago once they realized the FBI had raided it. Donald Trump has a lot of supporters, right? Either passively or very, very actively. And you have to admit that his people will most certainly turn up. And they did. They immediately flocked to Mar-a-Lago. Me just looking at the tweets of that and the video of that last night, my first thought was, okay, where's the FBI surveillance van collecting intelligence on their cell phones? Because you've got live streamers showing up to Mar-a-Lago like, dude, the FBI is there collecting intelligence on you. So I think that they're going to get a lot more intelligence on this from the actual people who showed up rather than Donald Trump himself. And the same thing applies online. We know for a fact that one of the FBI's main tricks is to see who is outraged about something they did online. So someone gets online, they get really angry, they say something they shouldn't online, and that stays online forever. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest lesson the average American can take from this incident so far. Again, this is not an unexpected event. We were expecting Donald Trump to not just be raided, but most likely arrested at some point. They're going to have to. Whatever one's feelings are about Donald Trump, I think are kind of irrelevant at this point with regards to this specific kind of raid. And for whatever reason, I feel the need to caveat once again that I'm personally no fan of Donald Trump either. For many different reasons. But the fact of the matter is that this is a president of the United States who has been raided. His personal residence has been raided by the FBI. Now, when I look at that, I see a lot of different things. For one, I wonder, okay, was the Secret Service in on this as well? Because Donald Trump still rates Secret Service protection. So did the Secret Service agents on his personal detail cooperate with the FBI? I also question whether or not Donald Trump himself got the tip-off somehow. My guess is he probably did. The man was president of the United States. He's got intelligence collection networks working for him no matter where he goes. He's got friends in very high places, right? So I find it very hard to believe that he would not have been prepared for this raid. And that shows the naivety of the FBI that conducted the raid. It's not just a political move to target the president of the United States, but look, like even Andrew Cuomo has figured out that this was going to hurt the liberals more than it's going to help them. Because now you just made the man a martyr, even if not literally, you've made him a figurative martyr in the political game. And even Andrew Cuomo has taken to Twitter to mention that this is going to decrease the legitimacy of the other extreme leftist stuff they're doing, which in fact it will. My guess is that Donald Trump, if he has any brain cells left, would never keep anything incriminating at his house. Like, that's the most junior level stuff, right? So the FBI raiding his residence, did they actually seriously think they were going to find anything? Maybe they did, I don't know. Either way, a lot of egos got involved of a very important decision-making process, and that's dangerous. Because as we're getting ready to, as I'll talk about when we get to international issues, I think that incompetence and egotistical thinking is going to get a lot of people in trouble inside the federal regime at this point. When it comes to thinking about how government works, I'm trying not to take a side with regards to how I know internal federal agencies work. I'm trying to see things as objectively as possible, and I tell you that, look, raiding the home of a former president is not good. You're talking about things like invoking executive privilege concerns. You're talking about Watergate level stuff. Like, man, it's a huge deal. And as if these concerns were not strong enough, we're finding out this morning that the federal magistrate judge, which authorized the FBI raid into Donald Trump's personal residence, has a history. This guy is the same guy who left the U.S. Attorney's Office about 10 years ago or so to represent legally employees of Jeffrey Epstein. So yeah, this is quite literally something that I don't think even Hollywood could come up with, the levels of corruption that we're seeing here. Which again is not surprising, but I think that the larger lesson for all of us here is that we should most certainly expect more political persecution by federal agents. I mean, if they're going to raid Donald Trump's house and not be afraid of what's going to happen to them, then what do you think they'll do to you and me? So I think that's probably something that we should be mindful of. But to bring my sort of disorganized rambling to a close, I think that this event is really just, for most people, going to be an indicator of just how serious the situation is. Like I mentioned, if they're going to raid Donald Trump's house, what are they going to do to you? I think that for most people in the country, this is really just going to be a solidification of how serious the situation is. I think this event is going to wake up a lot of people to what's going on. This is not just some conservative pundit, right, saying, the FBI did this, or the FBI is doing that. No, this is real here. The President of the United States, the former President of the United States, had his home raided by the current administration's FBI. You know, that is really hard to deny. And the fact that even occurred, I don't care what the raid was about, right? The fact that occurred is pretty shocking. I can guarantee you that this is an event that is going to live in infamy for a very, very long time. And I think that this is not going to be the last one. For whatever reason, the current regime has decided to target Donald Trump in any way possible, using any resources possible. Again, regardless of whatever your feelings are about the man, I think that it's very interesting to see that the Biden regime is so terrified of him that they're willing to risk all of the fallout from raiding his opponent's home. They're willing to risk that fallout simply because of how scared they are of him. I don't know if that fear is misplaced or not. But in any case, it's what's happening, and I would expect it to continue quite seriously. At first, I thought, when this stuff kicked off, I thought, you know what, they're probably going to just go after his chief people, right? His leadership, his chiefs of staff, things like that. But no, we're here now. They've raided Donald Trump's house. So there's no coming back from that. And I think that the only way forward for the Biden regime is to continue on forward and double down, because that's what they've been doing with quite literally every single event that they have done, every single thing they've done so far. So yeah, I'll shut up talking about that for now, and we'll kind of see what the fallout from this is. I'm not really going to pay attention to what's going on in Congress with regards to congressional Republicans, because I think it's going to be interesting to see which Republicans do not denounce this raid. That's going to be interesting. But I think that really any actions that congressional Republicans are going to take is mostly going to be political theater, and I don't think it's going to be any kind of effective, whatsoever. So anyway, I guess we'll have to see what happens. So let's go ahead and move on to international issues. So again, this brief is quite haphazard this time. I haven't really had time to talk about Sri Lanka or India just yet, but it looks like the famine that is underway in Sri Lanka has started to either affect India, or it's more of a correlation, not a causation type thing. Basically, India is having some trouble with rice. So the main manufacturer or distributor for rice in India has expressed that it's kind of confusing. I've seen headlines either way. They've said that either they're having trouble or they're going to have trouble in the near future. Again, I haven't dug into this too much, and probably by the time that we figure things out, it's going to be too late anyway. But yeah, food shortages are certainly on the menu, or would it be off the menu? Either way, for the world for this winter. So that's going to be something to follow. I will let you know. Again, rice is not a huge dietary thing for the United States. We don't really consume that much rice as part of our diet, and we have a lot of corn, which is in the same kind of nutritional class, I guess you'd call it. It's a staple good, right? Most people in the United States have corn as a significant part of their diet. However, a rice shortage is going to affect Southeast Asia like you would not believe, because most people in Southeast Asia, shocker, eat a lot of rice. So most of India's exports go to the rest of Southeast Asia. So that's going to be the market that's going to be hit the most with this, I would guess. But I would also expect, rice shortages to kind of pop up in random places, as is typical by now. Moving on to Russia. This is a very interesting one, and something that I would keep an eye on in the future if you're interested in foreign defense stuff. And that is that the FSB has been arresting scientists throughout many of their programs over the past few weeks, actually. So the latest guy to be arrested is Alexander Shiplyuk, who was arrested by the FSB on charges of treason. So they're not messing around. He was the director of the Institute of Theoretical and Applied Mechanics of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences. What a job title. This entity, the Institute, has been leading Russia's efforts to produce and improve their hypersonic missiles, which they have announced are supposed to be implemented, the newest hypersonic missiles they have. They're supposed to be implemented on their naval vessels or deploy on their naval vessels sometime this fall. Yeah, very interesting. This is the third scientist that has been arrested in the past month from the same exact project area. The Institute's lead researcher and another researcher in the laser physics department have also been arrested again on charges of treason. So when I look at this, I think, oh, there's some international espionage going on. Either these guys were working for the CIA and spying for the United States, or maybe even China, who knows. My guess is that Russia have found out about it, and they're cracking down on some kind of spy network they've got going on in their technology divisions. So again, this is not uncommon. The United States has people leaking secrets to China basically daily at this point. But yeah, Russia also has the same problem. So I would be very interested to see what their hypersonic missile program looks like, and whether or not these hypersonic missiles actually work. And finally, let's talk about Taiwan for just a second. As many of you have already seen, many people are kind of freaking out over the recent escalations of tensions between Taiwan, China, and the U.S. Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan to check on her insider trading investments increased tension sharply for a couple of days, but for the most part, we haven't really seen anything beyond posturing and saber rattling. Many volumes can and have been filled by discussing the highly complicated and intricate balance of diplomacy in Southeast Asia. So right now, let me just take a couple of minutes and alleviate some concerns really quickly. As for me, I'm not really worried about China right now. I'm not really super concerned about World War III breaking out with China over the next few weeks or months, no matter how much some people on the planet seem to want that. My own personal opinion is that China, they're going through a lot of domestic concerns right now that would make war not really an option at the moment. Ukraine has shown that a major superpower, the former Soviet Union, can't even reoccupy one of their former republics in the exact same terrain that their entire military was built for. China, looking at the mountainous hellscape of Taiwan's terrain and the fact that they're an island, would pretty much expend the entirety of their military invading Taiwan, or at least enough to where they're going to be in some serious trouble if they try to go for Taiwan. Plus, we may be outraged at the hundreds of billions of dollars of our tax money that's been sent to Ukraine, but we must remember that our recent funding of Ukraine does not hold a candle to the mountains of funding that we have given to Taiwan over the past few decades. Again, I'm certainly no Southeast Asia expert. I'm reading up on the region. I'm trying to get smart on that, but at the moment, I will 100% say that every day that goes by, I distrust military strategy analysts more and more. The China boogeyman is big business, both for the defense industry and for the private sector as well. Very rarely will defense blogs talk about China's problems, which is important to understanding the whole picture. And China's problems are numerous, like their starving military, their almost complete lack of any adequate electrical grid, their failing financial structures, their laughably substandard naval vessels, their failing banks, the massive drought and food shortages throughout the nation, and the hydroelectric dam that is upstream of 15% of the entire world's manufacturing capability, the same dam that has been forming 10-meter-long cracks in it since 2003. The U.S. defense industry is certainly drooling over the opportunity to do everything they can to start localized conflicts. The powers that be would be very happy to start some of those small wars that have been the standard for a while, but they also don't understand that big wars, as in thermonuclear wars, won't do too much to pad their wallets and will actually make their bank accounts kind of irrelevant if they were to occur. So the ultra short bottom line is expect lots of saber rattling by China and the United States. China will seek to maintain their dominance over Southeast Asia, and the United States will seek to keep poking the dragon as a way to increase the potential for another series of forever wars, which will benefit the U.S. defense industry. However, with inexperienced and incompetent people conducting diplomacy in Southeast Asia, we average citizens have to be mindful of the sheer stupid mistakes that could be made with potentially irreversible results. We can expect and plan for corruption, but we cannot plan for stupid. Mistakes are always what make me nervous, and the current U.S. regime is most certainly playing with fire with their flippant, egotistical attitude towards issues bigger than themselves. So I don't want to dismiss China as completely not a threat. They most certainly are, and China's national aspirations are quite clear. They, for lack of a better term, have expressed they want world domination, or at least domination in Southeast Asia. And I think that that's a little concerning for everyone, even if China is not able to meet a lot of those goals. So now, on the other hand, the United States gave Putin permission to reinvade Ukraine. We all remember, maybe some of us remember, the small minor incursion scandal from the early opening days of the reigniting of the Ukrainian war. And that's something that China has noticed too. So my guess is that if China were to somehow get the gumption to invade Taiwan, the U.S. response would probably be the same, if not much less, than the situation in Ukraine. The reason for U.S. politicians funding Ukraine with so much of our tax money and just printing billions, hundreds of billions of dollars is mostly due to corruption and not defense. But with Taiwan, the roles are reversed a bit, sort of. Half of our politicians are quite literally in bed with Chinese agents daily, so I don't think the dynamic is going to be quite the same with the China-Taiwan conflict as we have seen in Ukraine. Either way, the U.S. can do all the poking it wants, but at the end of the day, China is going to have to be the one to launch the invasion, and I don't know if they are militarily capable of doing so at the moment. But again, stupid exists on both sides of the aisle, and China's leadership might think they have a chance at taking Taiwan right now. Maybe they think they're pushed up against the wall with their failing economy and they have to do something. Although I'm not really sure what they would get from taking Taiwan other than national prestige and the potential for further invasions down the line. But again, I think this is a pretty remote possibility considering the domestic issues China is going through right now. Of course, I could be wrong and probably am, but out of all the issues we're dealing with in the United States right now, China is pretty close to the bottom of my list of concerns. So, sorry to kind of disappoint anyone out there expecting an in-depth analysis of the situation with China. In years past, I know myself would have been fascinated with stuff like this, but these days I'm just having a really hard time caring about the intricate details of diplomacy in Southeast Asia. But again, we'll keep an eye out, and if anything squirrely starts going on, we'll do what we can to keep everybody informed as to what's going on. So that's pretty much all I have for today. Again, thank you all for watching. Sorry this was more of a haphazard one than normal, but that's the case when things seem to happen very, very quickly. It's almost like every single day we find out of some milestone, groundbreaking event that's never occurred before in history. So again, it's not easy to kind of keep up with these kinds of things, but that's okay. We'll do the best we can. And thank you again to all of those who support us on Patreon and Utreon. You guys have really helped us out a lot, and you're continuing to help us make these briefs a possibility well into the future. So thank you so much for that, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.